Welcome to the Lounge Lizards podcast. It's so good to have you here. It's a leisure and lifestyle podcast founded on our love of premium cigars, as well as whiskey, travel, food, work, and whatever else we feel like getting into. My name is Gizmo. Tonight I'm joined by Rooster, Senator, Grinder, and Bam Bam. And our plan is to smoke a cigar, drink some bourbon, talk about life, and of course, have some laughs. So take this as your 128th official invitation to join us and become a card-carrying lounge lizard. Plan to meet us here once a week. We're going to smoke a New World cigar tonight, share our thoughts on it, and give you our formal lizard rating. We share our wide-ranging interview with Dunbarton founder and master blender Steve Saka, recorded live at PCA 2024, where we discuss his approach to both blending and business, the discerning taste of the modern smoker, and his surprising thoughts on Cuban cigars, all among a variety of other things for the next 2 hours. So sit back, get your favorite drink, light up a cigar, and enjoy as we pair Weller Antique 107 Bourbon with Dunbarton Tobacco Trust Sin Compromiso in Selección No. 4. A Robusto Extra tonight from Nicaragua on the pod. It's the Dunbarton Tobacco Trust Sin Compromiso, Selección No. 4. It's a beautiful 54 ring gauge cigar by 5 inches long. And boys, we have a very, very special episode ahead of us tonight as we are going to cut in an episode we did live in Las Vegas at PCA 2024 with the founder of Dunbarton Tobacco Trust, Steve Saka. So we have a very, very unique episode ahead of us tonight, Bam.
Yes, we do.
Bam's having some technical difficulties there.
Bam broke his headphones as we hit record.
I can't do this.
Have you ever plugged in a headphone before, Bab?
I can't see the hole. Don't go there. Motherfucker.
So boys, tonight is going to be a very, very different episode. And Bam, I'd like you to note on the ledger the procedural changes that are going to happen tonight.
Done.
As we cut in an interview we did live in Las Vegas with the founder, Steve Saka.
Bam just erased himself from the ledger, just for the record. You just put him in charge, and every bit of Bam Bam accountability has been erased from it.
Not true. I now have redundancy, so I'm good.
All right, boys, let's cut this thing. See, we're getting on the cold draw on the wrapper. It's got a unique band on it. It's like a Celtic cross almost.
Yeah, it's a deep, dark green, almost black, and cream borders. Beautiful.
Bam, what are you getting on the cold draw?
Dude, so I'm getting, it's unusual. I don't think I've ever gotten this in any other cigar. I'm getting almost like a currant or a strawberry, like a deep berry cold draw.
I got the same, a ton of berry, and it's crazy.
It's
like
insane.
For this to be a Nicaraguan cigar, I don't think I've ever cut a Nicaraguan cigar and gotten like a blast of berry on the cold draw.
It's one of the most delicious cold draws I've experienced.
I kind of get fig.
Yeah.
It's
I get
a fig
fig.
note. Yeah.
Fig, fruit, yeah.
Very traditional.
I got to
fig.
say, the wrapper and the foot of the cigar smell, it's very unique. Very nice.
Super distinct.
Senator noted, yeah. I like the vanilla on the wrapper. That's very faint, but it's there.
Yeah, for me, it's like berry and vanilla on the wrapper.
Unbelievable.
And it's like so intense, the aroma.
Yep.
It's like no other kind of wrapper I've really ever smelled that it's really pronounced.
And the wrapper's really, I think, exquisitely rolled here. Beautiful.
It's slightly oily too.
Just a touch, right?
Yeah.
I also like there's a nice gentle box press on this.
Yeah.
It is. It feels better in the hand, I think, than it would if it was rounded.
Correct.
Like, I think the box press it feels nice in the hand, easy to hold.
Yep.
I think that, having spoken to Steve about it and the unique way they cultivate these leaves and they mature them and age them, you definitely probably get some of that in the cold draw, right?
Mhm.
Some of those flavors.
Let's light them.
All right, boys, let's light this thing. The
Rooster's
Dunbarton
ready.
Tobacco Trust Sin Compromiso. it's the Selección No. 4. And again, it's a 54 ring gauge Robusto Extra by 5 inches long. And like I said, while we recorded an interview with Steve live in Las Vegas. We did smoke the cigar. Of course, we didn't rate it, but we decided to come home and package that interview inside an episode where we're going to smoke this along with you guys while you listen to the interview and then come back in a couple thirds and talk about the cigar and the pairing and give it a rating at the end.
What a great interview that was.
It was. Real treat.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave us a lot of time. I was expecting maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
We sat with him for almost an hour. So I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting information here for the listeners. And again, I'm excited to listen to it.
Yeah.
Hearing it back.
Guys, is your lighter okay over there?
I don't know.
Jesus. I thought Pagoda was in your seat.
I thought it was like a swarm of bees descending into the room. This cigar is delicious.
There it is.
Wow.
Delicious cigar.
Man, very similar. And, you know, obviously, when we're sitting with Steve in Las Vegas, it's not the opportune time to really dive into the notes of a cigar. But we really had this experience, and we talked about it after the interview, that the cigar was really unique and different and interesting. And especially on the light, those initial notes are just something that you've never tasted before,
It's
especially in a Nicaraguan cigar.
It's very rich on the light
Mm.
and smooth.
And there's a very unique sweetness to it
Mhm.
that, again, Grinder alluded to. Steve, you'll hear this in a few moments, but Steve talking about the process that they go through, aging the tobacco, choosing the tobacco, blending it, and his intentions with that provide a really unique cigar here. And again, this is the second time we're smoking it.
Yeah.
It's identical to the one we had in Las Vegas. So how would you characterize the sweetness that we're getting? What would you call
I get
that?
like a dark chocolate that's slightly sweet, but definitely like a pungent dark chocolate.
Yeah, it's unusual that the strong fruit forward on that you get on the cold draw doesn't reveal itself in the smoke here, but that dark chocolate's there, I think.
I think it's kind of like a
slight
fruit.
cocoa.
It's like a fruit that's covered in chocolate.
Yeah, and with a cocoa
Right?
overlay.
Okay, so I've been trying it. First of all, the finish on this cigar I absolutely love. And I mentioned just the scent of the wrapper being super, super unique. And even the finish, there's like a note that I haven't been able to place perfectly. It's everything we're describing,
Mhm.
but I know that there's something specific that kind of captures that.
Yep.
I had to look to see what people have described as tasting notes, and it's a lot of what we're talking about, like cocoa and some of the and the berry you got earlier. Bingo. So for any coffee lovers, if you've ever been to New Orleans, I love a lot of the coffee in New Orleans, like at Cafe Du Monde. It's made with chicory root.
Mm.
That's the note that people call out. That
Wow.
even on the Dunbarton site, they say there's a chicory root note here. And I think that's what that unique flavor is. Like, I'm not kidding. Like the coffee, when you get it at Cafe Du Monde in New Orleans, there's a unique flavor in that coffee you will not get in anything else that you try. And it's because it's brewed with chicory.
Wow.
It's the same kind of note in this cigar.
That I would think would be a bit earthy, slight earthiness, maybe, I'm guessing.
No, because
No?
chicory's like, it's like sweet, but not in like a traditional sweet, not like caramel or
Almost like a dark
brown
chocolate.
sugar. Yeah, like it's like sweet, but also a little like bitter, like dark chocolate.
Mm.
It's like a very just unique flavor profile.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I mean, there's a there was a restaurant in Ridgewood that used to have these chicory root what's the donuts they make in New Orleans? What are they called?
Beignets.
Beignets. Where they had chicory root like filling in the
wow.
beignets. It was phenomenal.
Wow.
And it reminds me of this.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked. It's like that's a note you would look at on like some cigar website and say there's no way that a cigar has chicory root notes in it. But there's something so unique and distinct about this cigar, and I think they've nailed it. Like that's it.
Well, that's cool.
This cigar would go so well with a double espresso,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
There's a sweetness in here that you almost want to question, like, is this infused with sweetness? And obviously it's not, because you're not getting that unnatural type of sweetness you'd get from a sweetened cigar or a Java or an acid or something like that. But there is a sweetness about this that is just so inviting, and I think is accessible to so many smokers out there, including to smokers who smoke a lot like we do. I think it's very unique and interesting and unlike anything we've ever had.
Yeah, there is a slight sweetness. For me, it's not forward. I really think that dark chocolate overtone that we discussed, I think that's really forward for me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you
So
can-
much smoke, guys. This is
The combustion's
yeah, it's really great.
So, Sin Compromiso, without compromise in Spanish, of course, is the company mantra and what they say is the guiding ethos for everything they do at Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. They wanted to create a cigar brand to manifest this expression into a tangible reality. They say it was an incredibly challenging task, as Steve mentions in the interview, as this cigar simply had to be beyond exceptional, from the cultivation of distinct and unique tobaccos to the careful working of the prize leaves that they included in this, allow only the best torcedores to handcraft each cigar. Even the box which contains these vitolas had to be extra special. In short, the cigar is the best of everything Dunbarton has to offer. As they say, it's a truly unique, complex cigar, smooth yet strong. It delivers a captivating and entrancing smoke for the experienced palate with the flavors that are constantly swirling and changing from puff to puff. And I think we are
very
experiencing
accurate.
that.
It's very accurate.
I think it's what you just described there at the end for the experienced palate.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely for, not it's for, but I
It's
think
not for a novice smoker.
yeah. I mean, I think this is something that as you progress, you might want to like, if you're smoking this and you haven't smoked cigars for a long time, try it. You'll love it, and then develop your palate, and then come back to it and try it again. You know, because it's definitely something that you got to have a lot of those tasting notes already tapped into to really get the full effect, I think.
Yeah.
Is this a puro
It is not.
Nicaraguan? It's not.
So the wrapper is Mexican San Andres Negro. The binder is Ecuadorian Habano. And the filler is independent plantation-grown Nicaraguan. This is the 6th vitola in the line. I'll go through some of the other sizes. The 56x7 is the Selección No. 7. The 44x7 is the Verita Magica. The 52x6 Torpedo is the Selección No. 2. The 54x6 Parejo is the Selección No. 5. And finally, the 46 by a little over 5.5 inches long is the Selección Intrepido. And this one is the Selección No. 4, again, 54 ring gauge Robusto Extra by 5 inches long. So they now have 6 offerings in the line. And this cigar was launched, boys, at PCA 2024, which is, of course, why we had it at the Dunbarton booth with Steve, and then went out and got some for the review tonight.
That was an incredible experience, I have to tell you.
Yeah, it was a real treat sitting down with
It was just so unusual and very interesting. The conversation. I'm a big fan of Steve Saka after that talk. Really depth of knowledge just off the charts. And fun.
So, boys, before we throw to the interview, I just wanted to kind of wrap up our conversation about PCA 2024 in Las Vegas. We just got back a few weeks ago. We had a great time. Obviously, we did an episode live from there that we reviewed the Epicarillo Allegiance in Sidekick on. We had a great conversation there. But do you guys have any kind of closing thoughts on PCA that we didn't cover in that? Obviously, we've had a few weeks to digest it now. The lingering one that comes to me is while we were recording, we had a few listeners walk up to see us, and we had to tell them to wait, obviously, till we were done recording. But namely, Lizard Francis came up and saw us, and I think he ran up on you, right? You were sitting by yourself. We all had ran out after recording.
I mean, it's funny because, we had interviewed the CEO of SD DuPont, then we had recorded an episode there, and we had a very kind of tight turnaround to like grab a bite or use the bathroom, and then we were going to interview Steve Saka. And so we had all kind of split up to do whatever we needed to do, and I had quickly grabbed some lunch.
Pagoda went to get a beer.
Pagoda went to get his 14th beer. And I came back with a plate of like 3 tacos, and I'm just sitting there like trying to scarf these down as quickly as possible so we can get ready for the next interview. And as I'm sitting there, Lizard Francis comes by, and he pops over. He's like, "Are you Senator?" And I'm like, like grease running down my hands and like eating these tacos. It was like such a mess. I felt terrible, but such a great guy. And he's been a listener for years, and just talked about how much he's enjoyed the pod. It was just fun to see for him, like some of the listeners we encounter, kind of what he expected, and, him meeting us in person. And I think the rest of the group then, came by, and I know Gizmo got the usual feedback. I thought you were a lot older.
Everybody says that to me, man. Everybody thinks I'm like in my 50s.
That's not old.
No, no, but older than I am. I
Correct.
always get that feedback.
Yeah.
Always. Everybody says that to me.
Right.
Well, the sport code,
Oh yeah,
The sport code that was an add-on.
It's true.
Yeah, it was really nice meeting Lizard Francis. Obviously, as we mentioned on the episode a couple weeks ago, it wasn't a consumer show, so Francis was there on business. Just happened to be a big fan of the show. Obviously, if it was a consumer show, we would have been able to set up some more of those kind of chance encounters. But it was just awesome, him kind of rolling up on us and
It's wild.
and saying
honestly.
hello. It was
Well,
amazing.
It's
I
wild.
have to say, the thing I enjoyed talking to Francis, he definitely made me feel better about my cigar procurement habits, and I think everybody in this room, because I think it's easy for us. We obviously we procure a lot of different cigars, and we all have great collections. We're very lucky to have. But talking to Francis, I mean, he was talking about how he's got like 3,000, 4,000 Cuban cigars, and I was sitting there. I was like, all right, I
Yeah.
don't feel so bad
Correct.
anymore.
And he only collected them in the last, I think,
few years,
2 years, 3 years.
We're not the only degenerates in the group.
Exactly. So I just like when I meet people like this. I mean, even we talked about the listener meetup that we had at Resorts World, and
That was great.
talking to some of those guys, and I can't believe I'm sitting there and they're telling me like, oh yeah, I mean, I've probably got like 2,000-3,000 Cuban cigars, and they only started smoking Cuban cigars
Just a couple years
during the
ago.
pandemic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's insanity. I mean, I guess that's honestly similar to Lizard Gizmo over here. But, for some of us, it's like,
Hello.
I can't even fathom. Like, Roosters, you've been smoking Cubans a while. I've been smoking Cubans. obviously,
1947, he's been
before-
smoking cigars.
1947, well before the pandemic. Like,
It was around the first pandemic.
Correct.
World War I.
the Spanish flu.
Spanish flu straight out of Cuba.
So I just felt it was just remarkable to see how many other people there are just like us
Mhm.
that have just dove headfirst into this at such a crazy level. So it was really fun just chatting cigars with them.
Yeah, honestly, it was a while to meet people that identify with what we're doing outside of our group. It felt like an outer body experience. I was just taking it all in. It was really unique and a special experience when we were with our listeners, of course. Yeah.
Where
was
is
great.
it from?
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
San
that's
Francisco,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
not the easiest place to smoke, but
That's
there are cigar lounges, but
Mm.
well, there's one, but
Yeah.
not the easiest place.
The show itself, though, was for me very informative. I've never been to a cigar convention ever, and I was surprised the level of professionalism, the beautiful. We've talked about this. The beautiful setups and the displays, just how serious these vendors take this business took me aback a little bit, honestly.
I think that's an interesting point to see the brands showcase the side of themselves to, like, where typically the side we see as end consumers is more marketing, right? These were businessmen conducting business, acting as professional as they could, being spot on for every kind of question that people would have. Like we mentioned this on one of the pods we recorded there. Just to see how much hustle was going on, just to take orders and make orders, it was pretty cool to see, and to be a part of that, and to feel like we, are part of that world in some way. However, whatever gradation that is, it felt really cool. Yeah.
I also just love the appreciation of tobacco in general.
Agreed.
Like, the listener will hear in our interview with Steve Saka, us talking about Cuban tobacco and Cuban cigars. Like,
which
I
was a
don't-
huge surprise.
huge. I don't think we certainly didn't go into the interview expecting to spend
No.
any time talking about Cuban cigars and Cuban tobacco.
That was probably the most intriguing part of the conversation, I think.
In many ways,
Honestly,
and
yeah.
just like his openness about it and what's unique and distinct, and
Mm-hmm.
I was just really encouraged hearing that, and to see other people at PCA. I mean, we had another listener come up who was smoking, I think, a Fundy. And I was just sitting there like,
Casually
this is
smoking a
wild at PCA.
Trinidad Fundadores.
You would never
I
expect
just, I
that.
just picked this up.
You just
Walking
wonder-
around the show with a $100
Oh, yeah.
cigar.
I mean, Gizmo was talking about before we were going how he was bringing X number of Cuban cigars. I'm like, he's going to get us kicked out of this
I
thing.
know.
Like, this is about New World tobacco.
Correct.
And so,
I was reprimanded and told to take off my band.
Correct.
Yes.
By
really?
me.
Correct.
So for
Which I
me,
did.
it
It's
was
all for
just-
the brand, baby.
Yeah.
That was a huge surprise and just really encouraging how open people were, and even within the New World space, how honest folks were about what other brands do well. It's like in other categories of like consumer products, you would never hear someone from Pepsi talking about how Coke makes a great product. That's
Mhm.
never going to happen. But the fact that like even during the Saka interview, like he talks about it's pretty damn hard to beat the consistency of Padron. Like they do it better than just about anybody. Like just the willingness to acknowledge what each of these different brands brings to the table and what's unique and special about them. I just love that like honesty and vulnerability of being able to say like we all don't get every single thing right, and some of us do certain things better than others, and how open that conversation was. I was really impressed.
It felt like he was recording with us for a very long time because he went into the fruit, the floral notes of all of the Cuban catalog, and that to me rang true. And it really, like it's like you said, it was a moment of honesty on his part, and he said we can never match that. That I found was revealing.
One of the things that I took a lot of heart to was when he was talking about his experience as a cigar smoker, how he started in this place, and then he, how a lot of cigar smokers, you work your way up to intensity, and then you sit there, and then you find your way back, and you kind of
That's a
go
great
up and
point.
down the line. And when he was saying that, I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's basically where I'm at right now. Like, this is like, I worked my way up. I was in Nicaraguan puros. That was it. And then I kind of dialed it back and found a different sweet spot. And like, to hear him talk about that and how it's like, it's a journey, this hobby of ours, this
Yeah.
passion, it's a journey.
But getting back to the show, it felt great being with us lizards, moving through that show as a unit. It felt like Lizard Mafia. We were on point. We went from booth to booth, and we got noticed, and it was something unique. That's something I've never ever experienced either. It was really, really special.
And
Who dat?
Yeah, exactly right.
We talked too, about on the episode we recorded live there, the warm reception that we received. It was our first show. We were meeting a lot of these folks in person for the first time, and the amount of stuff we got done at the show, and then the amount of stuff we have set up for the next few months and the rest of this year with manufacturers and folks we're going to have conversations with.
Very
and
exciting.
Bring a lot of content to the listeners. I think it was a very, very productive,
Extremely
good experience for us and really more importantly, our listeners. I
Yeah.
think we're going to bring a lot of good content to the listeners this year because of what we were able to accomplish at PCA 2024.
Stay tuned.
And speaking of who dat, and you mentioned New Orleans coffee, the next show is going to be in New Orleans, 2025. And I hear 2026 is also going to be in New Orleans the next 2 years.
I can't wait for the private senator tour
Oh,
I love
of New Orleans. Okay, I cannot wait for that tour.
yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun going down.
I mean, I'm sorry. This is a place, no container laws. I mean, it's just like, I think Vegas they bill as like America's playground. Like New Orleans is truly America's
Are you
playground.
trying to say that this is a true place for Bam Bam to experience?
This is going to be game changing for you.
Oh,
Bam Bam.
yeah.
Game changing. We're
I
gonna
may
have a
never
blast.
come home.
or dangerous.
That too. Luckily, there are not many laws in New Orleans, so you don't have to worry, Bam.
A true Bam Bam environment.
It is. I had my bachelor party before I got married.
There
in New
we go.
Orleans. Loved it.
this
Great
cigar
scene.
is really,
Yeah.
it's really delicious.
It's amazing.
awesome.
It's amazing. So, boys, Steve Saka for the uninitiated, which I don't think there's many listeners out there who are uninitiated about Steve. But let me just run through his history in the business before we go to the first part of our interview. So he was the longtime editor-in-chief of Cigar Nexus as a member of the media. He then moved to as advisor to the president of JR Cigars. He then became the president and then finally the chief executive of Drew Estate for an 8-year run with them. Obviously, very famously launching Liga Privada and Herrera Esteli. He left them in 2013, and in 2015, he founded and is the master blender now, going on almost 10 years, of Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust.
Yeah.
So we are going to throw now to the first part of our interview with Steve Saka, and we'll be back with you in the second third. Okay, so we are at PCA 2024. Sitting in the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust booth with its founder and CEO, Steve Saka.
Wow. I need a pay raise. CEO.
and
Wow.
Master Blender, of course. And very kindly, he gave us all Sin Compromisos,
Yeah, it's
Selección
the
number
It's
4.
the new Robusto size.
It's really,
I'd
really
be
good.
the only dumb enough person to launch a cigar brand in 2018 and not put a Robusto in it. Yeah. Took me 5 years to wake up. Actually, the truth is, so when we were launching Sin Compromiso, it was supposed to have a Robusto, but I was never happy with the way the Robusto tasted. So I was kind of like, when we launched, I'm like, okay, I'll just leave the Robusto out and then I'll fix it next year. And well, it took me 5 years to get around to it.
So tell us about the blend of this cigar. What makes this?
Sin Compromiso is a combination. It's a San Andreas Mexican wrapper, but it's a little different than most. I call it Cultivo Tonto. Well, actually, they call it Cultivo Tonto. Cultivo Tonto basically means foolish cultivation. I had read this article about these Japanese musk melons, these royal melons, and what they do. So a typical musk melon plant will produce 24 fruit, 22 to 24 fruit. But the Japanese, being Japanese, they do this thing where they would grow this vine and they would strip off all but like 3 of the fruit. And in the end, they would then look at the 3 fruit that began to develop on the vine, and they would then basically throw 2 of the fruit away. And the entire vein, the entire root structure and the stalk would all be dedicated to just this one melon. So you basically have basically the infrastructure dedicated to just supplying this one melon. And this one melon, they do other Japanese stuff, rub it, sing to it, and God knows what else. But basically, the concept was that this melon would end up being sweeter and more flavorful and richer. And they would end up, these melons were originally produced only for the emperors in Japan. And you can buy these melons now, but this one single melon costs like $200 to $300 for a single piece of fruit. And I found that really interesting. If you think about it from a cultivation point of view, this is no different than what the weed guys do, where you prune off all of the lower buds to try to focus all the energy of the plant into certain parts of the plant. And I wanted to do this with tobacco. So I decided to do a San Andres Negro. So what we do is we take, as we're growing the plant, we strip off all of the lower leaves just as they begin to leaf out, and we throw them away in the field. And we only grow the top half of the plant. And when you grow only the top half of the plant, you're not getting half the tobacco. You're actually only getting a third of the tobacco because of the weight, because the lower half of the plant is 2/3 of the weight. You have to understand, when it comes to farmers sell tobacco based on the weight of the crop. So this thing of where you're going to produce less weight is never a good thing for them. So it's a very special commission crop that I do, with the concept that I was hoping that these leaves that had the whole root structure and the stalk to support less leaves were going to give you a sweeter, more interesting tobacco. And I didn't know whether it was bullshit or not bullshit, but when we had done, and I buy San Andres Negro from the same farmer, traditionally cultivated. And when we were making the samples, I could, like, literally 100 times out of 100, tell which ones had the Cultivo Tanto wrapper on it versus the traditionally cultivated wrapper. And once I could do that, I was kind of sold on the concept. And that's what we use on all the Sin Compromisos, is the Cultivo Tanto. And so it's just a little sweeter, a little richer. And the other thing that we do on all the Cultivo Tanto wrapper is, so in Mexico, when they're doing the curing in the barns, it always pushes into their rainy season. So traditionally, Mexican tobaccos, when they were cured in the barns, they would have to light little charcoal fires, not to fire cure or heat track the tobacco in the barn, but to wick out the excess moisture that you had during the curing process. Now, they stopped doing this about 30 odd years ago, and they switched to propane burners, because propane burners are much more controllable, okay? It's much easier versus doing natural charcoal. But the thing is, the charcoal that they used to use traditionally was from a very particular tree that just grew there in the valley, and it had a very distinct kind of smokiness to it. So with a Sin Compromiso, I know you guys have already lit yours, but if you take like a cold draw on it, you'll actually get a taste of that slight smokiness in the wrapper, because I have them doing that traditional charcoal pit with the traditional wood to help maintain the humidity in the barn while they're doing the curing process. So that's one of the things that separates Sin Compromiso from the myriad of San Andres Negro products.
It's an intense process. Honestly, I haven't heard anything similar.
Yeah.
And a lot of the markers that we smoke.
We're a small company. Everybody makes cigars. They're all brown and round. We're all rolling weeds into a tube that you light on fire. So, one of the things that we can do as a small company is try to do something that's a little unique, a little different, a little special now, whether the consumer thinks it's worth the value or not,
right,
that's up to them.
Sure.
Right. And look, and it's not a free ride on the pony. I mean, consumers pay a little more for it. You know, Sin Compromisos, they range from like $16 to $20. So you as a consumer have to decide: do I think there's value in it, or do I not think there's value in it? I think there is, so that's the way I choose to make it. But ultimately, the consumer is going to determine whether they see the value in it.
There's a lingering sweetness that is so unique to this cigar.
Yeah, it's really quite good.
That I don't think I've ever tasted in any other cigar we've smoked. It's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah.
Is that from that process?
Yes, because it's the exact same seed variety. There's nothing unique in the seed, and there's certainly nothing unique in the stole.
It's the process.
It's the process,
And that's how you're differentiating
Yeah.
yourself.
I mean, but that's so true with so many things.
Well,
I mean, look, we're all
like the watch he's wearing and
Yes.
many other elite manufacturers, they differentiate themselves through process.
right. I mean, there's tons of cigars with San Andreas Negro on them that are very, very good cigars. So why would a consumer or a smoker choose to smoke A over B? So you're trying to provide something. But look, most of our customers tend to be more discerning. I always say our best customers are the ones that are the most experienced. The customers that have smoked not hundreds of cigars, but thousands of cigars. So, because I remember when I started smoking cigars, I had a new best cigar ever, like every Thursday. You know what I mean? Because you're learning, you're growing. It took me probably a good 10 years to develop my own palate as to what I liked and what I didn't like. And so one of the things for us is we've always made cigars with the intent that they're meant for the consumer that can tell the difference. If you can't tell the difference, then don't spend your money. There's no reason to. You know what I mean? I can't, because I tell you it's better is one thing, but that's not enough. You have to actually experience there. You go, okay, you know what? That makes a difference. When I smoke a Mi Querida Tricky Traca, I can tell the difference between this broadleaf cigar versus that broadleaf cigar. When I smoke a Sobremesa Brulee, Connecticut Shade, there's not a million Connecticut Shade mild cigars in the marketplace. The question is, if you as a consumer, can you see the value in it? Then that's what you're hoping to achieve.
And I think the lasting, is someone reaching for that cigar over and over is the fact that I know when I pick up a cigar that has entered my rotation, that every time I smoke it, it's going to give me a very, very consistent experience. And that's crucial.
Well, look, consistency is one of the things that sadly is overlooked in most cases. Because, I mean, the thing is, look, you make these blends, and look, as a manufacturer, you want to get thousands of people to try it. But in the end, you don't need thousands of people to love it. What you need is you need to make a cigar that sings to somebody, right? So that if 1 out of 100 people go, oh my God, that's really incredible, I really love that, and they add it to the rotation and it becomes consistent for them, then that's a home run hit. And I think that's one of the things that, like, when you get cigars from some companies, they're always trying to make in the middle. They're trying to appeal to the widest consumer base. But the problem is when you do that, you're making a cigar that everybody likes, but you're ultimately not making a cigar that somebody loves. And what you want to do is you want to try to create a cigar that somebody loves, that it becomes part of their rotation, something they feel the need to have. And that's far more important because there's plenty of really good, decent cigars that are in the market. They draw well, they burn well, they taste fine. But is it a reason for you to take your hard-earned dollars and spend your money on that? I mean, that's the part that makes it different. So I've always said that when you make a cigar that everybody likes, you've ultimately made a cigar that nobody loves. And what you really need is you need someone to love something. And look, they're not going to love everything. It's not possible. I mean, we all have very diverse things in what we like and what we don't like in a cigar. Now, what we try to do as a company, we make a very wide portfolio. We make, mild shade in the brulees. We make really potent broadleaf spicy cigars in Mi Querida Tricky Traca. We make a medium body like the Sin Compromisos that you're smoking now. We try to make the very best in a given genre, in a particular style of expression, with the hope of attracting that customer. They go, wow, that's a really great cigar. I really love that. I want that to be my
insights.
My love. But I don't expect the guy that loves Sobremesa Brulee Toros to also be as big a fan of my Mi Querida Tricky Traca 648. Those are two very different cigars with two very different smoking experiences, and for the most part, made for a different consumer. Now, there's some consumers like me that smoke across the spectrum. I smoke a wide variety of sizes. I smoke a wide variety of strengths, wide variety of different flavor profiles, but that's not most customers. Most customers have a certain style of cigar that they like.
They stay in that
and
alley.
they stay kind of
Stay
in
right
their
there.
lane.
Yeah.
So the idea is to try to make something that is really going to eventually sing to each individual so that they can find something that best suits their palate and the way they like to enjoy their smoking experience.
And I think to your point, I mean, the way that we talk about and think about cigars, and I'm thinking about this right now with this one, is where would I slot this in my rotation? Is this a cigar I'm going to have with a cup of coffee in the morning? Is it an after lunch cigar or after a big steak dinner like the meat lovers
But
might
here's
do,
the funny
right?
part. That's going to vary as you as a consumer, right? Some consumers, they're going to think that the Red Meat Lovers is not their perfect after dinner cigar.
Yep.
They're going to think that real mild, soft expression is the type of way they like to end after a heavy meal. So that's the thing that you always need to think about is we're all different. Oysters. I don't get oysters. They're disgusting.
We are
They're
big oyster
snot on a
guys.
shell.
Steve, we are big oyster guys.
And guess what? Millions, if not billions of people love oysters. I don't get it. But does that make me the arbiter of good taste? That I think oysters are disgusting? No, what it makes me is the arbiter of my taste. I'm not an oyster guy. Doesn't make oysters bad. It just means that oysters aren't for me. Now, you deep fry them, you put them in a po' boy, you cover them in remoulade, I'm there every day of the week. You know, if you char broil them like Drago's does in New Orleans, I'm there for the char broiled oysters. But raw oysters, nah, I don't get it.
All right, we'll go back to our interview with Steve Saka in a few moments. But first, boys, what are you thinking about the Selección number 4 from Dunbarton in the Sin Compromiso line?
It previewed wonderfully at the show, and it's exquisite.
I think this is an excellent cigar.
It's an excellent cigar.
It's so well rolled,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, look at the construction.
Beautiful
like,
ash on it. Yeah.
Great ash, burning, nice razor sharp burn. I'm just glad that we're doing this here outside of the craziness at PCA because I know I enjoyed this cigar when we smoked it with Steve, but this is even better having this here where I can like fully focus on the cigar and appreciate every note I'm getting. It's excellent. Honestly, like I think all of us are Padron fans. And so like there are some Padron-esque notes in it that like cocoa and coffee and things like that you get. There's like a little bit of earth, but I think, you know, we were chatting a little bit about this, the fruit and sweeter notes that you get. You don't necessarily get in all Padrones.
No.
And I think that adds another layer of complexity to this cigar that's unique and just super enjoyable.
Totally agreed. Like for me, get that fruit on the finish. And for me, it's a nice, long, smooth, elegant finish. On the front, I'm getting deep cocoa and that dark chocolate's continuing. But on the finish, I'm getting fruit, which is really unusual.
I think that's spot on.
It's
and the funny
unusual.
thing is, like, because of that, the finish is very clean. Like, as much flavor as this cigar is putting out, like you have a really bold Nicaraguan cigar or Nicaraguan heavy cigar if it's a blend. And like the finish, like just what's the taste in your mouth is such a blast of like deep, intense flavor that you'll wake up the next morning and you'll remember exactly what you smoked because it will still be there. But with this cigar, because it finishes with the fruit notes Ben was talking about, it finishes cleaner like a medium or even milder like cigar or a Cuban, which I really like.
Yeah, I think the San Andres wrapper has a lot to do with the sweetness of the cigar.
Okay. You know, honestly, like when at the show, he poured us little cups of bourbon. I think bourbon's a fantastic pairing with this. But the way this cigar finishes, as you mentioned, Senator, I barely took a sip when I was there. I can smoke this all the way through without a sip of booze at all.
Well, we're not going to do that, Bam. We're going to have some booze.
and Steve would have it no other way. He's a
Steve's
big
true.
bourbon guy.
Yeah, big bourbon guy.
I love that guy. He has bottles at his feet, right within reach.
He's like, are you a sweet? Or do you want to get knocked off your
Freaking
feet?
awesome, man.
Like, you want some syrup, or do you want something to grow hair on your chest?
Correct.
Like, okay.
Actually, for the listener, we should really paint the picture. Obviously, we were there, but what's kind of cool about Steve Saka, obviously all the brands have their booths, and a lot of these guys are really kind of moving around and having conversations with a bunch of people. And Steve just kind of sits at this one chair.
He's parked in his chair, dude.
He's parked. It's like this nice, comfortable leather chair. He's got his bottles of bourbon right next to him. He's got his cigars that he wants to smoke. And, you want to chat with him, you come and have a seat, and he's happy to have that conversation. But he's not getting up to go find people.
No,
he's not moving.
Also, he told us that his staff does not allow him to sell because he keeps messing up the orders. He's not allowed to. He's only allowed to sit there and talk to the retailers. He's not allowed to place orders.
He's got a good staff.
He's got a great staff. I like that.
So that booth was hustling and
it was busy.
bustling. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
was a small footprint, smaller than the other booths, but the amount of activity around his booth, I think, just goes to the quality of the product that he's putting out.
There's definitely a lot of hype around it.
Oh, absolutely.
Does he make other stuff other than the Sin Compromiso?
a lot.
He makes a
of
lot.
stuff.
Yeah, we did the Muestra de Saka. There's like 8 or 10 lines that they do, and certainly we're going to do, I'm sure, a bunch of them on the podcast.
And that box of unusual Lanceros with the different wrappers and bands, really.
Yeah, we've got to check
the
that out.
GFY Lancero. Go fuck
Beautiful.
yourself, Lancero.
Oh, okay.
It says it all
That's
about
on
Steve.
brand. That's on brand.
It was fun meeting him because I didn't realize how much of a fan I was of all of his work until I met him, and I'm thinking like, oh, he made that and that and that. I'm like, fuck, I love all of his shit.
Yeah.
Like everything he's ever made, I've really enjoyed. And this cigar, I wanted to say it earlier. When I take a draw, I get this like tingly, sharp, wonderful flavor on my tongue. But as I retrohale, I get hit with the cocoa and the chocolate and the warmth. And it's just like the combination of those two things in one single draw. That's complexity to me.
Agreed.
That's something that you can't, it's really hard to replicate.
So, boys, let's talk about our pairing tonight in line with Steve serving us bourbon at the booth at PCA. We are back to Weller with the Antique 107. For connoisseurs out there, this is the red bottle. We did the Special Reserve, which is the green bottle. This is the more expensive entry in the line. And I think it's an excellent bourbon with this cigar tonight.
You've got to take that glass to your nose because it is so vanilla forward on the aroma. It's incredible. Lends itself beautifully to this cigar, I think.
I think it's a wonderful pairing with
right?
the cigar.
You're getting vanilla, no?
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very
and it's like
good.
a little, I want to say syrupy on the nose a little bit. Too.
Caramel, like
Yeah, caramel is the right word. Yeah.
I get toffee.
Mm.
Splitting hairs.
So do we know how much this bottle is?
We do. So at Total Wine by us, it is $57 a bottle.
Okay.
Which is a very reasonable price point.
It is.
Now, obviously, as we talked about on other bourbon episodes, I think the Weller episode, a lot of these bourbons are hard to get, so the scarcity drives a high secondary, market price.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what a lot of people pay. But $57, I think, is very reasonable for this.
The funny thing I read is when this came out, the retail price was around $30, and a lot of the retailers were charging above that because the demand was so high, and they were charging in the 50 range, and then they actually bumped up the retail price to 50. And so it's now pretty much anywhere you can find it, which is not easy to, but when you can, it's in that $50-something.
Yeah, Grinder, I think you're spot on with the toffee for me on the finish. So when I take this initially in the front, the aroma, of course, for me, very heavy vanilla, but on the finish, it's a beautiful, almost salty toffee. That's pretty special bourbon.
Well, it's good we're doing this too, because we did the Special Reserve on another episode, which scored super high. And I think everybody that knows Weller knows the tie-in to Pappy and how Pappy played a huge role in what Weller has done. And the funny thing is what they call poor man's Pappy. If you were to try to concoct the Pappy recipe
This would be
for
it.
way less than you're paying for a bottle of Pappy, they say it's certain percentages, I don't know the percentages, of the Weller Special Reserve this Antique 107, and the Weller 12-year. So we're kind of making our way through all of these.
Can we mix all the bottles together and get a pappy?
I mean, that's basically what they do, but we'll need a lizard that really knows.
We'll get
their
Pagoda
bourbon.
in here. He'll be measuring.
How much will end up on the floor? That was the question.
We're all Ubering that night.
All right, boys, let's go back to our conversation with Steve Saka, the founder and master blender of Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust.
I think the thing that separates good cigars from great cigars, like you're saying, is complexity. And a lot of our listeners, I think, that have been on this journey with us, we're trying to find for them brands and particular cigars that deliver a complex experience. Even if that's a mild cigar that maybe someone likes, that it has enough complexity to it that it's interesting enough for someone like me or some of these guys who doesn't love a mild cigar, but with enough complexity can enjoy it. And I think with this cigar, you talking about the process that goes into this, whether it's the blending decisions that are made that deliver that complexity, that's what all of us are chasing for in some way, shape, or form. And it's really great to hear what you're doing to deliver that.
Yeah, agreed. Fully agreed.
Yeah, complexity and consistency, right? Because like you mentioned,
consistency is something that regretfully is overlooked. Because the thing is, we all have this experience where we smoke a brand and we absolutely love it. And then like a year later, it doesn't taste anything like the original.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right? And I mean, look, you get 100 people to try a cigar and 3 of them fall in love with it. And then they become box buyers on it. They know when it changes almost instantaneously because they smoke so much of that one cigar. And that's one of the challenges where the big companies, they have a huge advantage. They have the deeper inventory levels. They have the production capacity. They're better capable of making consistent cigars than the small manufacturers.
Yeah, they can inventory raw products.
Right. And that's the reason why most brands, when they're launched in the marketplace, they literally last 2 to 3 years. They come and they go very, very quickly. And it's one of the things that for me is really important. I mean, Sober Mesa was the first thing we launched 9 years ago. We sell more Sober Mesas today, 9 years later, than we sold starting 9 years ago when it was the hot new thing. You got to have it. You know what I mean? And the only way that that's possible is if the blend is consistent. Now, when I say the blend being consistent, one of the biggest fallacies that so many people make is they think that that means that it needs to be the exact proportions of a particular tobacco or even the same tobaccos. The thing is, tobacco is inherently always changing. It doesn't change crop year from crop year. It's sometimes different from bale to bale within a crop year. So the way that you actually make a consistent cigar is by constantly micro tweaking the blends on a continual ongoing basis. Because you as a consumer, yeah, you want to hear that we use this and it's that and blah, blah, blah. But in the end, what you really want is you really want the same smoking experience every time you choose a cigar. That's why a cigar like Padron is so popular, okay? Because what they have done is they have basically taken many years of tobacco and they're basically constantly adjusting the blend in a way, using the same tobaccos, but adjusting it so that when the consumer buys that cigar out of the box, they know what they're buying. They know what they get. They know what the experience is going to be. So you can't treat cigars as a Betty Crocker baking recipe, because if you do that, they will not deliver the same experience. Your job is, as a blender and as running a factory, is to constantly micro adjust and tweak. Just the same way, sometimes the tomatoes are a little sweeter. Sometimes they're a little more acidic. Do I need to add a little more sugar to my sauce? Do I need to add a little more salt to my sauce? Because in the end, you love grandma's sauce the way grandma's sauce is.
I don't think it's ever been explained to us that way, where the micro tweaking is such a big part of this. I've never heard that from any other manufacturer. So that's really, really intriguing. I got to say.
You also have to understand that probably most of the guys that you talk to, they're almost always the sales and marketing weenies. They aren't actually the people that buy tobacco and make cigars.
Hey, Mr. Saka, we're pretty connected. Okay?
No, but I think to Steve's point, you think about, we review tons of New World brands as well as Cuban cigars. And I think in Cuban cigars, what you're saying does not happen very much. We talk about the inconsistency we experience
but Cuban
with
cigars,
Cuban cigars.
Look, they have a different problem. They have a very limited amount of tobacco. and they have a tremendous amount of pressure to produce so many units. And what ends up in the box ends up in the box. I mean, just look where we are with the Cuban production numbers now. Let's skip the crazy cigar boom years. They've been pretty much consistently making 75 million to 85 million units a year for a very, very long time. But they found themselves in a position now. What I think last year's production was 38 million
yeah,
units.
it was
roughly.
under 40.
Yeah.
It was
So now
under
you
40
got
million.
38 million, 40 million units. They don't have a choice. And I know that the Cuban, I don't know how far off the weeds we want to go here, but like
You're in our weeds.
But
We
the,
love it.
the Cuban price increase of last year that they blamed on the Asian markets to kind of bring the price where it is. Yeah, that was the thing that they said out loud. But if you really start to think about it, the real problem was we used to be able to make 80 million. We can now only make 40 million. How are we going to make the same amount of money when we have half as much available stock to sell? Well, the answer is very simple. We're going to make the price X, because if we don't make the price X, we're fucked.
Yeah, because your
that's
your
the
demand
reason
will
why
skyrocket and
right.
you can't provide.
That's the reason why they did what they did, is entirely an economic decision. It has absolutely nothing to do with the product.
And it's also, to your point, even now, they just announced last week that the expected yield of tobacco, they just halved it. They just cut it in half last week of what's coming out now.
Yeah.
Plus, there's a massive brain drain of people who are actually willing and able for $1 a day to go roll 100 cigars.
Now, what's really
it's
weird
changed
is,
a lot.
so most people on my side, let's just call it New World to make it simple, they're typically the anti-Habanos people. I'm actually not that dude. I haven't smoked a lot of Cuban cigars, but I probably smoked 10 or 12,000 Cuban cigars.
Oh, that's all?
Over the years. I had like a 7-year stretch where I was pretty much a heavy Habanos consumer.
Okay, so we need to know what your Habanos choices
I'm
were.
boring when it comes to Habanos. I'm like still just punches and Ramon Alone.
Punch
That's what we love.
awesome.
You're selected.
You're
man.
talking
Look at
about
us.
Yeah.
Ramon Alone is special
Yeah,
select.
I mean,
Come on.
Partagas D4?
Yeah, D4s,
These are stellar
Partagas
cigars.
Unvarnished, 898.
898,
There we
yeah.
go.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
there was a point in my
Who
life
knew?
where
I know.
Who knew?
where I
You're a lizard.
chased all of the no, dude, that's crazy. But anyways,
Dude, I feel like we've been with him for years.
Yeah.
All right.
But, I
I'm
mean,
coming over your place with a 6-pack. We're going to chat. All right.
But I mean, and look, and I still smoke Habanos. The thing for me, my palate's kind of changed over the years. So back in like the late 80s, early 90s, Habanoses were stronger compared to most of the Dominican cigars I was getting. There were very few non-Cuban cigars that were like delivering for me. There used to be Rolando Reyes Sr. used to make Cuba Aliados, no longer the same cigar, but that satisfied me. Ernesto Perez Carrillo, when he made his El Rico Habanos and those old style La Gloria Cubanas, they satisfied me. But a lot of my consumption was Habanos. When we got to about 1998, 1999, the Nicaraguan cigars, the tobaccos, they actually really jumped ahead for me, strength-wise and palate-wise. So for me, other than some of the limited regional releases, I look at most Habano cigars as mild to medium, right?
We agree.
I mean, that's kind of where they are.
Even their Maduros don't even touch full.
Right. And so they're kind of relegated from my own smoking to be in that. The one thing that Cuban cigars have that I don't think any of us have been able to recreate in any way is that kind of Habanos have this very unique, sweet, slight floral nature to them.
Yes.
We're talking Bam Bam's language right now.
So, I mean, and that floral characteristic is something that we haven't been able to duplicate. So no matter how many different ways we talk about Cubanesque or this or that, it's never quite there, to be honest with you. It just doesn't work. But just guess what? They can't make a Mi Querida Black.
Yeah.
They have no tobaccos that they have available to them that can simulate that kind of smoking experience. So I don't look at Cuban cigars as being lesser or greater. I look at them as being different. Now, separate of, we can get into the construction issues, which have always, look, when I was a heavy Habanos consumer, 50% of the cigars, I just accepted the fact that the construction was not going to be, we kicked the living shit out of them when it comes to
100%.
that, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But we cannot duplicate that flavor profile. So when a customer or a consumer says to me, Habanos, 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 if they're actually a real smoker and they've experienced the portfolios across a variety and they still go back to Habanos, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I can understand why, because it is a very unique flavor. It is a very unique aroma that you get out of a Cuban cigar that you can't duplicate in another cigar. But I don't consider it better or worse. I consider it to be its own entity. And you have to understand, too, for a lot of the international consumers, 30 odd years ago, non-Cuban cigars in the marketplace were only about 2%. And the reason why is it has a lot to do with how cigars are distributed worldwide. You don't have individual retailers that buy cigars. What you have is you have fixed distribution in all of these individual countries or territories. So in order for a distributor to bring in a cigar, they needed to bring in a lot of it because they were basically buying a commitment for a 1-year basis. So for them, Habanos was their premium. And then the only thing they bought from us, not in Cuba, was all of our shit product. They wanted the stuff that was literally $2 cigars. So here you are, you're in wherever, Germany, and your only comparative standard is their premium Habanos and our $2 crappy bundle cigar. Well, of course, you as a consumer go, well, all these Nicaraguan cigars suck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're getting the worst of the worst. Now, things have dramatically changed over the last 10, 15 years. Non-Cuban cigars currently, they're pretty much 40% of the international market, and they're probably going to get up to be about 70% of the international market pretty soon. But now these international consumers are now getting to do a much more apple-apple comparison. It's not a direct translation to Cuban, but at least now they're getting our best New World cigars versus the best Habanos cigars. So now it becomes a question of what flavor do you like? What strength level you like? It's no longer this tremendous quality difference that originally was.
But, and you're also benefiting from the price, right? The fact that the Habanos price has skyrocketed to a point that in Hong Kong, a D4 might be $50.
But I think even more than the price, I think because of the lack of inventory and their shift to the Asian market, you now basically have retailers around the rest of the world who were always like the champions of Habanos are now put in a position where they basically have to motherfuck it because they can't get it to sell. And look, you're a retailer. Your job is to sell cigars. So you can talk about how great the product is that you no longer have available to your consumers to sell. And then the other thing too, again, part of also what makes a big difference is the whole social media and how interconnected we've become as a world. Because now what you see is you see these younger consumers that are in Italy and in Germany and in Africa and Australia. They read about all of the interesting products that we have available to the American consumer, and they're intrigued by them. Where Habanos, what do you have? Last new brands were in 1998. San Cristobal and what was the
Quaba.
Quaba was late 90s.
The Vegas Robana.
Oh, Vegas Robana,
band, right?
Yep.
And then what did you have next? You had the line extension on Cohiba. What was that? 2010, 2011, Bahiki. That's all you've got new. The only other thing that you've got new is the regional or the special limited releases, which are priced at a point that if you're not like a super special whale customer, you never even get to sniff that stuff. So they do nothing new and exciting for the smoker to really get into, where we make something new every Tuesday, right? So there's so much stuff. There's so many interesting, wide variety of blends. And because of the way the internet works, they get to read about all these things. So they're interested in trying all of these different cigars.
Here's a question for you. So the other day we asked ourselves a question about what the largest emerging market is for the New World product in Europe or Asia. What
it's Asia.
Is it Asia?
Yeah,
for
the
New
Asians
World
are
products?
crazy right now.
For the
Every
New World
place is
cigar?
crazy. Look, even a podunky, crappy company like us that nobody's ever heard of, Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, I'm doing $500,000 in Brazil alone.
Oh, that's
In
fantastic.
Brazil.
Wow.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's
Wow. Amazing.
insanity right now. It's really quite crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
What do you think is driving that?
I think it's a combination of it's a few different things. Obviously, if Habanos is delivering so much less, there's a void, number one. Number two, it is the fact that the world has become so much flatter in the way of communication and access to information. So now you're able to drive a lot more interest into things that they otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to in a way that's very economical. Where before, you had basically gatekeepers of the information, where the gatekeepers have pretty much fallen at this point. I think the other thing that's really made a big difference is, I know we like to bag on and I do, the millennials and the Zs of how fucked up they are. And you guys are fucked up for a lot of reasons. But let me tell you.
Are you talking to us?
Yeah. Not me, by the way.
Yeah, but let me tell you what they are that we weren't. They're far more discerning of a consumer.
It's true.
They have
Completely
spent
agree.
Curious.
Yes.
They have spent their entire lives being advertised to, unlike any other generations, right? And for them, and they're also not as much. Everybody's a value consumer because everybody wants to feel what they get for their worth for their money, but they're far more discerning. They research everything. They read about everything. They make conscious decisions about how they're going to spend their money, and they're okay with spending more if the quality is actually better.
It goes back to your
Okay.
process statement.
Right.
That
So
supports
for
that
them,
statement. Yep.
that's a part of them as a consumer base that's unlike any other consumer base.
You're speaking to our listener base right now, because our podcast, these are the conversations we have every time we light up a stick, every time we drink a spirit. We're talking about value for money.
Yeah.
We're talking about what are the big
Look,
bangs.
value is a universal thing. So whether a cigar costs $4 or whether it costs $40, what's really important to you as a consumer, when you're smoking that, do you say to yourself, I'm happy with what I spent for the experience I'm being given? And if I'm satisfied with that, then guess what? The cigar is the right price. It's just the same way. Look, a Toyota four-door sedan is a wonderful cigar. A Mercedes is the same four-door sedan. They both go forward. They both go in reverse. The Mercedes a little bit better fit, a little bit better finish, better interior, a little bit more ergonomically designed. Yeah, I could have spent my $40,000 on a Toyota and say, wow, why would I ever spend $120,000 on a Mercedes? But if the guy that gets in his Mercedes feels the difference and feels like it's worth the money, then he's happy with his $120,000 purchase for his Mercedes. And that's the universal truth about all of us as consumers. We all want to feel like we're getting value for our money. But value is not based on price. Value is based on your perception of what you spent and what it gives you in return. And that's the thing that people need to think about.
All right, boys, we'll go back to our conversation with Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust founder and master blender Steve Saka in a minute. But first, what are you guys thinking about the pairing? The cigar, the Selección No. 4 from Sin Compromiso, and the Weller 107.
Honestly, the vanilla notes in this spirit bring out the fruit and fruit forward that I'm getting in this cigar. I think it's pairing beautifully.
I agree. I think a bourbon with this cigar is a perfect pairing.
Agreed.
I mean, you could drink plenty of different spirits with this, but like, would I ideally pick up a scotch with this? Probably not. It would be a bourbon or a rum also that has those like sweet notes that would really
I think a rum would be
complement.
really good.
Rum
with
would be
this.
good.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
call.
Maybe a cognac even,
I agree with that.
possibly.
Cognac. I don't think
Cognac.
I agree. I don't think a scotch would really fit the bill.
Mhm.
But the caramel toffee flavor is on the nose and on the tongue as well. It persists,
Yep.
which I like.
So, Rooster, this is your first time having this cigar. What are you thinking right now?
Yeah, I mean this cigar I can have this in the morning with the coffee.
Yeah.
It's not really
It's not
bold.
overpowering.
It's not overpowering.
No.
It's not like like a Padron Family Reserve or like the 90th. I mean, it's got oomph. It's got strength, but it's not overly powerful.
Yeah.
And it's got like really nice.
And it's got a lot of versatility because of that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a complex smoke.
Sure.
I don't think it's for a person who has never who's a newcomer to
Mhm.
to cigars. It's for a refined palate. But anybody who smokes Padrones, I think, would love this cigar.
Agreed.
I agree, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because one of the things that was surprising for me when we were talking with Steve, we've reviewed one of his other cigars, prior to this, but I don't have a ton of experience with his full line, and him being the guy behind so much of what Liga has done, which are very full bodied cigars, I just assume that pretty much everything Dunbarton makes is like really, really full and intense in flavor. And talking to him and hearing him say that kind of his philosophy, what he likes, and he talks about how what he likes is what he sells. And so if you don't like what he likes, then you probably shouldn't buy his cigars. But his ideal is they make some stuff on the milder spectrum and some stuff on the fuller spectrum and everything in between. But the consistent theme across all of them is like flavor, but smooth delivery. And that's a lot of the time what we kind of call Padron, at least the regular line, the regular production line that Padron puts out. And so I finally sitting there was saying like, oh, wow, like there's probably something for me in everything that he makes. And with this cigar, how much flavor it puts out, but how smooth the delivery is. Like those are the New World cigars that excite me most. I chase a lot of flavor in a New World, but I don't want to be punched in the face when I'm getting it. And this fits that bill perfectly.
Yeah, I think this opens up an opportunity to dive deep into his catalog.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
For sure.
The smoke is very velvety.
It is.
Yeah,
I mean, it's bellowing beautifully,
coats your mouth and it lingers, and it's a pretty long finish.
It is.
And the combustion's great.
It's awesome.
Amazing.
The thing that I will disagree with you guys on, as far as accessibility, I think there's a lack of harshness here that you get in a lot of Nicaraguan tobacco. Even the ones that have Ecuadorian like this does, or the San Andres wrapper from Mexico like this does, there's a lack of harshness here that I do think that if someone were to walk in a tobacco shop and pick this up and having only smoked a couple cigars or a couple cigars a month, I don't think that they're going to put this to their lips and go, this is too much for me, or this is weird, or this is a problem, or they're going to want to put it down. Like, I don't think it's something that lacks accessibility.
Go ahead.
I agree with that, with the caveat that as long as it's not someone who smokes mild cigars.
Right.
Okay, that's fair.
Because this is
That's
not
fair.
for a mild cigar.
No, it's
That's
not.
fair. That's
like,
fair
like
enough.
your father-in-law, I don't think will love this cigar.
I agree with you.
True.
Yeah.
But as long as you smoke like medium or medium full cigars, I do think
You'll enjoy
this cigar.
Absolutely.
I don't think accessibility is the word I would use. It's more an appreciation for how nuanced the flavor profile is.
Well, and that takes years to acquire that,
Well,
right?
I'm sorry. I would argue it's a pretty fast transition. I say this as like the guy who always hands out exclusivos, right? Like Gizmo, his palate when we first met was nowhere near what it is now. And it took one exclusivo for him to instantly a light
Yeah,
bulb to go
that's
off to
true,
say
too.
like,
That's also
whoa, this is way different.
It's a light
I've
bulb.
told this, you know,
But
half,
how long were you smoking cigars at that point? A while.
30 days.
No. Shitty cigars for probably about 6 years on and off.
6
But
years.
not
but
to
Bam,
the-
if you saw the cigars he bought that day, you
I remember.
would not.
I remember
consider him a
those
serious
cigars.
cigar guy.
I don't
So,
want
like,
to go through that.
My point is, the
Can we-
learning-
me neither.
the
Can we
light
go
bulb
through the
was-
list?
My
What
point
were
is
you
the
smoking?
light
New
bulb
World
was instant.
Bolivar.
That was
No.
like a huge revelation. If you,
Correct.
anything that he was
It's
smoking,
true.
then you would not ever pick up.
Correct. Yeah.
But I use the same example where, you know, it cracks me up. And I think I've told this story where I've had friends over who smoke cigars occasionally, not often. And I'll give them a Padron Exclusivo and they're like, wow, this is a really great cigar. Now, can they appreciate all the complexity in it that we can? No. But they know it's a very good cigar. And then I'm plowing through all these Exclusivos with these guys and I'm like, all right, like I'm almost through a box at this point. I'm not just going to hand out like 3 boxes of Exclusivos in a day. So I like pick up like a Oliva Milanio that like I had bought like a box to try and never didn't really enjoy that much. But for someone who doesn't have the palate we do,
Mhm.
they're not going to know the difference. And
Oh,
to the
They knew
point,
the difference.
I'm not exaggerating. And these
Yeah.
are like friends who are so polite, so nice. And they're like, Senator, this is not as good as a cigar you were giving us before. And my mind's blown. I'm like, these guys smoke cigars maybe 5 times a year. And they instantly could tell the difference. And so while I agree with Grinder, like, will someone pick out every nuance of this like we can if they don't smoke often? No. But will they know the difference between this and the run-of-the-mill stuff that they might pick up?
Oh, 100%.
I really do think they will.
I agree with that. And also, like, from the point of view of a gathering, if you're having a party, yeah, giving an Exclusivo that's quite generous. That Padron 2000 for me has become like part of the repertoire for me to hand out. Large volume cigars are much more affordable.
Well, I fucked up, Bam, because once they have the Exclusivo, I give them the
You
1000
spoiled
series,
them.
and
There's
they're
no
like,
going back.
this isn't as good as the
But,
Exclusivo.
but that Padron 2000 reviewed beautifully here among this group, and this is a much more elevated cigar that we're having tonight.
Absolutely.
Of course.
So you should have given them the Melanio first.
And
then
100%.
the
I
exclusive.
totally screwed it up. Because, you know, my
we're all learning
philosophy.
here. We're all learning.
Because you probably thought they'd be like one and done. Maybe you won't have
Well,
another
that,
one.
but also, you know, my philosophy.
It's a
and,
learning
like,
process
bites
for
me-
Senator.
No. It's just, it bites me sometimes. Like, for me, it's, I don't want to give out anything that I don't personally really enjoy. And so the same is true for, you know, champagne. Like, I mean, it pains me sometimes. Like, you know, I'll put out good champagne and people who don't know shit about it are sitting there like pounding it left and right. And I'm like, I could have put out a $15 bottle of Prosecco and they'd be just as happy. But
It's true.
I don't want to look at the bottle of Prosecco that I wouldn't want to drink myself. And I don't like drinking something different than my guests are. So
Yeah.
the same applies with cigars. But once I really got hooked on them and I'm burning through them, that's when I was like, oh
You
boy.
know, that's
this might
also a
have been
very
mistake.
good point. Like you do want to give cigars that you're proud to hand over, right? And
Yeah.
it's a great feeling to see other people smoke and enjoy something that you love. That's a very good point.
And I've said this before, like, I don't have a guest humidor. I should,
You should.
but I don't.
I'm going to go buy my guest tower.
That'll take 2 years.
Cut off his mic, will you?
Well, this is a great cigar, boys. And let's go back to the final piece of our interview with Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust founder and master blender Steve Saka. And then we'll come back at the end and do our final comments and our rating on the Weller and the Sin Compromiso Selección No. 4. And we talk about value a lot.
Sure we do.
With regard to when you sit down and light a cigar, like we sat down 30, 40 minutes ago and lit the cigar, it's the time. It's the value with relation to time. I'm going to give an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours of my day to this cigar. Is it really giving the time investment that I've made in it? Does it make it worthwhile? And it's like you said, it's price really in some ways has nothing to do with that.
Price is determined by your wallet. We can only spend what we have. So we're all on a price. Like, I'm not a big wine drinker, okay? Wine is an occasional thing, more because my wife wants to do something fancy, whatever, right? I find myself as a consumer of wines, I find myself to be satisfied for most of the bottles that I buy that are between $28 and $40. That's where I've decided the price break is. If it's Thanksgiving dinner, okay, I'll sprinkle 140 here, 160 there for those meals. I'll buy the whatever Opus or a Stag's Leap or something like that. But that's the mental determination that I have made as a consumer of wine that's not like into wine, where I feel like I'm happy. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't drink an $8 bottle of wine and go, oh my God, that's amazing. And it doesn't mean that I don't drink $1,000 wine and go, what the fuck, $1,000? Are you shitting me? You know what I mean? But we all kind of find a place for ourselves where we're comfortable with what we spend. And ultimately, we judge everything kind of in that price bracket. In other words, if you're a consumer that regularly smokes a $20 cigar, it's very unlikely that you're going to start smoking an $8 cigar. You're really comparing your experience to other cigars that are near that price point to figure out what's the best value for you. Because you have come in your head to determine this is where I find things are good or bad. I'm a huge brown spirits guy, right? I love bourbons. I love scotches. Have I had plenty that are ridiculously expensive that I go, wow, that's amazing? But do I like it better than my $85 bottle of Lagavulin? Do I like it better than my $50 bottle of Noah's Mill? No, I don't like it enough that it's worth 6 times the value. Somebody else may say, no, I do appreciate the difference. I do see the value in it. So therefore, this is what I'm going to buy. But that's an individual decision that we as consumers can only make for ourselves, and that we as manufacturers, we can't tell you that why are you smoking this? Why are you smoking that? You're spending too much. You're spending too little. That is something that we have no control over.
You know, the thing that's really, really interesting about this cigar is, and I don't know what the age of the tobacco is. I know you're not a big age guy per se, but I'm shocked at how smooth it is.
Yeah, but that's true with all of our cigars. So I had this won't be as appealing on radio or audio, but so when I was so I started off as a cigar geek. That's how I got into cigars, like crazy cigar geek. So one of the things I did is I went to visit a factory in Honduras that made some of my favorite cigars. It was Hoya de Monterrey and Punch. It was owned by an independent company called Villazon. It's and I'm not saying the cigars are worse today than they were then, but it's a much, much different company, far removed from the people that were originally involved. And their general manager, master maker at the time, was a gentleman named Estelo Padron. Estelo Padron was the brother of Jose Orlando Padron, God rest his soul. Both Estelo and Jose Orlando have passed. And he was one of my favorite cigar makers. And I went to the factory and I shadowed him for about 2 weeks. At one point he said to me, Saka, the most important thing you need to know about making good cigars is this. And he pounds his chest like this. And I'm young and new, so what do I say? Passion, right? Passion, love. Fuck that. No. What a good cigar is a cigar where when you're smoking this cigar that's in your mouth, that you're checking your pocket to see that you have another. That's what a really good cigar is.
I love
a good
that.
cigar should be strong enough and satisfying that you're really enjoying it while you're smoking it. But when you get to the end of it, you want to reach back into the bag and take another potato chip. So while I love occasionally smoking a really strong, peppery, biting cigar, I find it wipes me out. So what I like for me, even if a blend is mild and even if a blend is super strong, it still needs to be smooth, is my personal viewpoint on cigars. So even our heaviest blends are still always smooth to the palate because I don't want the cigar to wipe you out. I want it at the end. I want to leave you craving another one. I want you to do runner. And why do I do that? Because I'm shameless and I want to make more money. I want you to smoke another cigar.
That's excellent.
Steve, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I just have to ask, we've talked a lot about cigars, but I do want to just get into briefly a bit about your story. And I say that because you built and ran such a wildly successful operation at Drew Estate. And so what was kind of the light bulb that went off when you said, I want to go out on my own and build what you're building right now?
So before I was at Drew Estate was actually, so I had a much better job before I was president of Drew Estate. I worked for JR Cigar, and I did a lot of their custom projects and whatnot while I was there. So actually, when I went to be president of Drew Estate, that was actually a step down. The truth is, I spent 20 years of my career making other people really rich. And look, not that I didn't do well along the way, but I kind of got to the point in my life. And look, I've been very blessed in life. I've been bought out 3 times, which is an experience that most people, you're lucky in your life you get bought out once.
Well,
right?
that's amazing.
That's
I've gotten bought out 3 times. And you always hear about that guy on Wall Street that gets really rich and then goes to Vermont and does goat cheese. I wanted to be that dude.
Well, that's
right?
you.
Right. So basically what we do now is, look, we're a small family company. We only make cigars that I like. We've been in business 9 years. We had our first company meeting, actual like real company meeting in December.
That's amazing.
9 years without a fucking meeting. That's perfect for me.
I like that.
I got tired of bankers in my life and attorneys in my life and sales and marketing weenies and focus groups and all of that nonsense. And I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. We're a company that's like really beloved and really disliked by a lot of retailers. I mean, we haven't given a single deal or a discount on a cigar since 2017. We're at the trade show. There's no deal. Now, for our best retailers, we give them unicorns. We give them stuff to support them, but we don't do business that way.
Right.
I don't give a fact that you have a beautiful shop, you're the best shop in Chicago, whatever, yada, yada, yada. No, I just don't care. I just want to be in shops that like the product, like the brand. We don't have salesmen and brokers on the road in almost the entire country. We have a few that we started with in the beginning, going the traditional model, that have done a good job, and I have no reason to take that away from them. But we haven't added a single person to go out and sell cigars since about 2017.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean? We just we do business with the people who want to do business with us, and God bless them. We love them. But I've always been a believer in dance with a girl that wants to dance with you. Don't chance something. So we've been a very slow growth, organic company. It's what we do, you know, and it's worked really, really well for us. And I'm just too old to want to do all that bullshit again.
Right. But you control every component of your production now, from top to bottom.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I'm the.
It's a polar opposite
I do
of
all
your
the
corporate
tobacco
experience.
buying. I do all the blending. I do all the production scheduling. I do all the final QC. I'm the guy, like all the brands, the graphics on them. I do that too. Now, I'm not good at it. So I typically have a 10-year-old on another monitor telling me in YouTube how to do things in Illustrator. And those little bastards.
I used that today to learn how to iron a shirt, by the way.
Yeah,
I was on there.
I mean,
I swear to God.
We're a real small mom and pop. We're a small light team. I mean, in the U.S., we have less than 10 employees.
That's incredible.
But we do business like we have 30.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But it's good because, what it means is that everybody that we have is really sharp and they work really hard and they get paid more. And I like that part. There's a benefit to your work. And we have no partners and we have no debt. And I don't have to worry about anything. And, and look, when you don't have the pressure to sell, it makes things easier. And I'm not trying to discount it. Look, we stay in business because people buy our cigars. But we don't feel the pressure. Oh, the numbers are down. We got to do this. We got to figure out a way.
You're setting your own rules.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, for the partners that we do business with, it's really great. For other people, they hate it. But look, they're their own independent businesses. I don't tell them how to run their shops. I don't tell them how to operate their businesses. They make decisions that are in their best interests. And look, even if our interests don't align, I don't disrespect it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But it's likely that those that buy from you align with your values.
That's what you hope.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, you're coming up on 10 years with Dunbarton.
Amazing.
What kind of roller coaster ride has that been for you behind the scenes in 10 years? Is it up and down? Was it a slow?
No. We've
what has
been
that been
blessed
like?
to pretty much grow year over year. But I will admit, it's been a grind. The first 3 years were really hard in the beginning. And as time goes on, it gets a bit easier. The problem is the more successful we are, the more work that I have to do because there's just more tobacco, more cigar work that is necessary. So like, for example, I do a lot of podcasts and I'm on social media quite a bit, but I'm not the road warrior going and doing that hand-to-hand combat. I just don't have the capacity to do so.
And I'm also curious, when you think about the next 10 years, what that looks like from your perspective. And I say that because for me personally, and I think a lot of our listeners, you talking about delivering even the fullest body of cigars that you make, having a smooth delivery, and you talk about markets like Brazil and these other emerging international markets that are starting to smoke more New World cigars. I think for any consumer in a market that's used to Habanos or a mild or medium cigar, what the gateway into some of those fuller cigars, Nicaraguan tobacco, is that smooth delivery, which sounds exactly like what you're looking to deliver. So I'm just curious, what do you see as kind of the next 10 years for what you're building?
Clue. I'll be dead. I'm going Tuesday to Tuesday.
New release to new release.
Look, I don't ultimately know. I mean, I don't even know if I'll be doing this 10 years from now. I mean, it's hard to know that I'm old enough to know to never say never and never to make ironclad statements because they just end up biting you in the ass in the long run. I mean, right now we're just going to keep doing what we're doing.
Well, we hope you keep doing it.
There's no current plan to change, but at the same time, if some idiot says he wants to give me $100 million to go away, I'm taking the $100 million. You guys are on your own. You know what I mean? I'm not stupid, But I mean, I really don't know. I mean, right now I'm just focused on what we're doing currently.
Right.
It's funny you asked me that because we just redid our wills and our estate planning, and one of the things that makes it very confusing is this small family-owned company. That and
Sure.
And I'm just kind of like, if I die, just shut it down.
We'll take it. We're here.
Correct. Yeah.
Let's
get that will adjusted.
down because I mean I don't know how it functions
Right.
the way it's currently set up without
you.
me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a sad thing, but it's the reality of it.
I mean, you've built an amazing legacy over all these years.
That's
right?
true.
You're so well respected.
I don't know.
You are. I mean, come on.
I think most consumers have no clue who I am.
I think the
I think most
discerning.
cigar smokers have never heard of Dunbarton, and they've never heard of Steve Saka, and they have no clue whatsoever.
I think the discerning and curious customers, the people that you want to
Absolutely.
reach, are.
And I think the more people that understand your process and how you make the cigar, I think just brings so much value to people. They'll be buying more and more.
You hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, and just what you're trying to do. I mean, I love a full cigar as much as the next, but I'm looking for a smooth delivery and experience.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to be punched in the face like some consumers are. Hearing you say what you just did
So let me say this.
opens
The way it
things up
works
for
with
me.
most cigar smokers, you get like cigar crazy. They obviously amp up the level of cigar, and they'll get to a point where you just can't make a stronger cigar and it still burns. And they'll go through a phase where they'll be there for like 3-4 years, but almost universally, they eventually drift back a little bit less. Because the problem is when you're getting something that's so strong, it wipes out all the flavor nuances. It kills the aroma. It kills the experience. So when you look at the guys that have been smoking 20 and 30 years that did go through that phase where it couldn't be stronger, you're always chasing the dragon.
Yep.
Eventually, they always kind of drift back a little. And oddly enough, they also sometimes get to the point where they can start to appreciate that mild cigar that they had dismissed 10, 15 years
That
ago.
seems to be a natural
Right.
evolution for
And
most smokers.
And it is the evolution of
We've
most
gone through it.
smokers.
We have.
We've
Right.
gone through that.
Personally,
Right.
Both of us. Yeah.
Because, and this is one of the reasons why you see some of these brands get like uber hot for like a stretch, because they're just hitting that point where they're getting those consumers that are in that segment of when
Yeah.
they're smoking.
Yeah.
But very rarely do they ultimately keep them, because almost everybody dials it back a little bit. Look at the craze we've had recently with super high proof liquors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's got to be 120, it's got to be 114, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. But almost always you're like, yeah, I still like my liquor a little hot, but I don't quite like it that hot,
Right.
right? And you just kind of drift back a little bit where you start to get more of the flavor and more of the nuance.
Can you talk a little bit about just your thoughts on aging tobacco? Because I feel like you've been on the
Yeah,
record
so,
talking about this. So
look-
I'm curious for our listener.
Look, I am not the guy that's going to be the proponent of long-term aging on tobaccos in the bale. Look, the longer something ages, I think you start to dissipate flavor. Now, I know it's a selling point to say this is made out of 5-year this and 10-year that. And look, there's a certain segment that makes a certain style of cigar, but I also think that you're giving away too much. So for me, most of the trippas that I use are typically right around 2 years of bale aging of most of the materials. And most of the wrappers that I use range between 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
I don't tend to go long term. I actually only have one cigar in the portfolio that's expressly made with all vintage tobaccos, and that's in Muestra de Saka, the Exclusivo. That cigar is made.
We love that cigar.
All the tobacco in that is aged a minimum of 5 years. But the reality, we're at the point now where it's aged like a minimum of 7.
Yeah.
Wow.
But minimum of 5 is what we say out loud because that's a safe number for me to say.
You know,
But
as good
most
as
of them
that
are
is,
sitting at
this is a
7,
revelation, this little cigar
so
that we're smoking right now.
But again, it goes back to what you as a consumer enjoy smoking.
It's been an amazing hour with you. I hope this is going to be the first of many. I feel like we could sit here and talk for 6 or
Honestly,
10 or 12 hours.
eye-opening and very educational for
Excellent.
me personally.
Look, anytime
No doubt about
you
it.
guys reach out to me, this doesn't cost me anything to bullshit. So let me know.
We appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being with us. And
thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Cheers.
All right. Well, thanks again to Steve Saka, the founder and master blender at Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, for spending that amount of time with us at the PCA show, which is incredibly busy. He gave us a full hour to sit and talk with him, and it was awesome. I mean, I couldn't believe how open and honest he was, not only about his own company, his own brand, which he's known for, but also how we got into the Cuban cigar thing, which
Yeah.
was really unintentional. We didn't preface anything with him. We just kind of naturally went into that part of the conversation, and it was really enlightening.
Yeah.
His kind of transparency with
But also,
how good Cuban cigars can be, and how different they are from what the New World manufacturers are
What
doing.
was also meaningful was the trajectory that he took from working with these companies and then bringing it down so that he has control of every step of the way, every part of the process. That's impressive.
Well, yeah, I also think, we've talked about how for us and why the pod is structured the way it is because, we love both New World and Cuban cigars.
Yeah.
And one doesn't take away from the other. They in many ways complement each other, right? Like it's about building kind of in strength and in flavor and in what you're looking for. And I think he echoed basically a similar sentiment. He's like, I love New World cigars because he said he smoked tens of thousands of Cubans.
Yeah.
And he got to a point where he wanted more.
Mhm.
And that's what he pursued from New World cigars. And then there were times that you want a little less. And then that's what Cubans can be good for. And so I just thought like he perfectly captured our palates and why we pursue tobacco from so many different countries and regions. And, I hope, especially for our listeners, like I'm shocked sometimes. Like, perfect example, we met with some listeners at PCA who said, I only smoke Cuban cigars. And to me, that's crazy. I mean, you'll remember this. We had this conversation with
Tuxedo Timmy.
Tuxedo Timmy.
Yep.
And I gave him a Padron 80th, a Padron Exclusivo, a Davidoff Millennium Pyramid, and an Oliva V Lancero. And I said, if you don't love at least 2 of these 4 cigars, I'll be absolutely stunned. And I think he tried the Millennium Pyramid. He was very happy with it. And I think it's, for those lizards that are kind of in one camp, there's a whole other world out there. And I hope that we're helping them explore that because all of us started in one camp at one point.
Absolutely.
And have now migrated to a place where I think we're open to so many different cigars and we see the merits of all different types of tobacco.
And we constantly talk about rotations and how
Of course.
each of these things fall into a point in a rotation for us. If it's daily, if it's weekly, if it's special occasion, like every good cigar or every great cigar has its place in a rotation, no
Sure.
matter its origin or blend. And I think to his point, it's like each of these things can offer something really unique and very complementary to the other.
But there are also some New Worlds that we've discovered, like the Oliva V Lancero, is very reminiscent of the Cuban experience because of the way it performs, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's also when you smoke a Cuban cigar, you kind of want a New World after, right? Or you kind of want to mix that in, and vice versa. I mean, you smoke a lot of New Worlds, you want to have a Cuban cigar.
Yep.
So it's good to have that mix.
Sure.
I got to say, this cigar tonight has been excellent. Obviously, when we sit with a guy like Steve Saka and we smoke his cigar, we don't rate it. It's not under the microscope. We're focused on the conversation and kind of the rhythm of that. But when we're under the microscope here in our studio where we record at 1086, it's like we're able to really dial down into the flavors and the nuance of the cigars. And I think that a lot of the things he talked about in the episode are very clearly represented here in the conversation we've had tonight, packaged around this interview. Like, I think a lot of what his intention has been is really delivered in this cigar. And I think it's very complimentary to a lot of the other things that we smoke. Like, these things come in boxes of 13. Like, I'm kind of depressed they don't come in boxes of 25 because I want to go out and buy a good amount of these because it's been a really good cigar tonight.
Yeah, that fruit note that I captured early, it's still there and it's continuing through. There are not a single rough edge on this cigar at all.
Yeah, I think it's picked up in spice.
A tiny bit.
A little bit.
But
Yeah.
it's
A little bit, but
in a
not
good way,
aggressive.
though.
much at
In a
all.
good Not way. aggressive,
No,
but,
no.
Yeah, I'm just impressed that the final third for me is just as enjoyable as
yeah.
the first third that got me excited about this cigar. And
Agreed.
I think that's the hardest thing we're always looking for in any stick is can it hold up all the way through? And this cigar has.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of makes me want to buy a box of these. Right
Yeah,
away.
me too.
Same.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to buy 2 to get
Well,
26.
Like I said earlier, we're going to do a deep dive into this catalog for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious to try that 44 ring gauge.
Yeah.
44 by 7. I mean, I love that
I'm
size.
curious about the Lancero collection that he has.
I'm even curious to try like his mildest of smokes. And the reason I say that, something I think this is probably the hardest thing to find is like mild cigars that are satisfying enough. And I think we've occasionally stumbled upon some cigars that are milder that we're like, wow, this delivers enough flavor that this is enjoyable. And I think about that like for the morning rotation, right? Like that's probably where I have the fewest cigars to slot. Like, what do I want in the morning? I can count on probably one hand the cigars that I routinely enjoy in the morning, where in the evening we have dozens of cigars that we would name. And so the fact that this is a guy who loves flavor, right, who's behind some of Liga's greatest successes ever, who makes milder cigars, they've got to deliver enough flavor, I feel like, to satisfy palates like ours. So I'm actually really excited to even try those too.
I think the way he spoke about the Sober Mesa, I think that's a good one to
that's the one we should try.
Yeah.
Especially with a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
We should do a coffee pairing one day.
Ready
that'd
for
be
that.
great.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, boys, you ready to move into the ratings tonight on the Weller 107 and the Sin Compromiso Selección number 4 from Dunbarton?
Yes, sir.
All right, Bam Bam, you're up.
I'm at a 9 with the Weller. The vanilla notes on the nose, and honestly, with ice, it's fantastic. Without, a little difficult to drink, but the price point and the enjoyability of this. And just going back to what you said earlier, I probably can do 2 glasses of this with ice. So I'm at a 9.
Okay, Grinder.
I'm at an 8. I really enjoyed it. I thought the sweetness was really on the nose was carried through on the palate pretty well. I don't think I could drink more than as much as I
like a one finger
Yeah,
pour?
like a one finger pour.
So for that reason, it's probably not as highly rated. But for me, it was delicious. It's 8's a solid score for a bourbon for me.
Okay, Senator.
I'm also at an 8 on the bourbon. I would definitely drink it again. I think it's got a really rich, robust flavor profile. I think it paired really well with this particular cigar.
Yes, it did.
I just think, I tried it neat to start, and it's hot. 107 proof. And with ice, it definitely helps. It opens up, it mellows out a bit, but it's still got a bite. There is some aggression there. And so,
I like that.
The things, when you think about like the occasion that we're trying to pair for, like cigars, we're spending a lot of time smoking a cigar.
Yeah.
So I'm not having usually one drink when I have a cigar, right? I'm spending hours.
You're having 5 or
enjoying
6
a cigar.
drinks.
Right. We all are.
We all are, sure.
And for
No,
Pagoda,
just Senator.
For Pagoda, 3 times that, but no, only beer at PCA.
Correct.
But because of that, I need something that I can enjoy multiple glasses of. And so just as a pairing with a cigar, I'm not sure that I would reach for the Weller 107 nearly as much as I would reach for the Weller Special Reserve that I'm sure I gave a 9, if not even a 10. So for me, I would drink it again. It would be like an after dinner drink, or when I have kind of a short window that I'm looking for something that's flavorful as a spirit. But is it something I would pair regularly with cigars? No. So that's why I'm at an 8.
So I'm at a 9. The 107 for me, I drank it neat the entire time. I thought it enhanced the experience with the cigar tonight. I think very in line with Steve's mantra, always having bourbon around. I thought this was an excellent bourbon. I really like it. I have a couple bottles at home. I don't reach for it a ton because I reach for the Special Reserve a little more. It has a little less heat, so it's a little bit easier on the palate. But for the pairing tonight, I think it's an excellent bourbon. So I'm very, very happy at a 9. And that puts the formal liquor rating boys at an 8.5.
Okay.
That's a great score.
So we talked about the price. It's what would you say? It was $57?
Yeah.
And what is the proof on this?
107.
It's called the Antique 107 Gizmo.
All right, I'm going to forget I said that.
107 proof.
All right.
I just did some quick math there.
I'm gonna edit that out.
Don't.
We're leaving it in.
Don't.
That
I'm
stays
gonna
in.
edit that out. That is getting edited out. All right, boys, it's time to move into the formal Lizard rating tonight on the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust Selección number 4 from the Sin Compromiso line. Rooster, you're up.
Steve Saka, this is a home run. This is a great cigar. I loved it. We all like Padrones, and I think if there's any Padron smoker out there, go out and try these. These are excellent. Sin Compromiso, it delivers. It's a solid 9 for me.
Awesome.
Great score.
Senator.
I'm in exactly the same camp. It's a 9. The construction was flawless. I had no problems with it whatsoever. I think it's actually a beautiful looking cigar, great wrapper, not super toothy or overly rustic at all. The flavor profile is complex. The fact that we were all able to call out so many distinct notes, and I think they carried all the way through the cigar, is a huge testament to the cigar. The biggest selling point for me is just how much flavor it delivers, but so smoothly. Like, that's how I fell in love with Padron so many years ago. And it's why I'm falling in love with what Dunbarton is doing with the blends that they put out. That's, I think, the hardest thing to do.
But that's what we look for in every cigar we
For
smoke.
sure.
Absolutely.
You
Really.
take Nicaraguan tobacco that's really bold, and to be able to deliver that smoothly is not easy. I mean, we've had plenty of Nicaraguan cigars that we would say, like, wow, this will kick you around. This is not for the faint of heart. And this is not like that at all. I think it's refined. I would absolutely buy a box, and it's a very strong recommend, 9 for me.
So I'm also a 9 for sure. I was impressed at the show. I thought it might have been a fluke. You know, we're sitting there with Steve, having the cigar at PCA.
We were
great
enthusiastic.
conversation,
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
Sure. Excited.
It's great. And then we sit here under the microscope, and I'm thinking, like, I hope it delivers. And wow, did it deliver?
Oh,
Like,
sure.
I could totally see this slotting in a weekly or close to daily rotation for me. The price point's accessible. I think it's around the price of, we always talk about the Exclusivo, around that $14, $15 mark. I'm very, very happy with this cigar at that price. And like Rooster said, I want to try some of the other Vitolas in the
Absolutely.
Sin Compromiso line. Like, it's a really great blend. I like the draw, a little resistant on the draw. I like the combustion. I thought it was excellent across the board. So it's a 9 for me all day. I'm very, very happy with this cigar tonight.
I would also, just quickly on what Gizmo said there, I legitimately thought us smoking this again after having it with Steve, that this wouldn't be as enjoyable.
You had some skepticism,
Of
right?
course.
A little bit.
Not
yeah.
that I thought it would be a bad cigar, but just that I thought, like, you know, the experience we're having at PCA, it's like, you know, when we're in Havana and we're smoking Cubans, like,
They
you're
taste
just,
better.
you're in
They
the
taste
element.
better.
They do.
Yes,
you're
they
just
do.
in
They
that
do.
element, and you're just enjoying things that much more. And the craziest part of it for me is it's not just that I'm enjoying it as much. I enjoyed this more under the microscope than I even
Correct.
did when we were sitting at PCA having that.
Correct.
That's a testament.
I mean,
Grinder.
there's
Oh, sorry.
just something smoking in this room, you know, without the ventilation going and stuff. I would really just enjoy the cigars.
Yeah.
Rooster loves a hot box.
Hot box.
I do.
Grinder.
Just ask his Tesla.
So I mean, you guys, I immediately after we smoked the cigar at PCI, I turned to you guys. I was like, I really, really love that cigar. And the testament there carried through even here still. I would say when I smoke this cigar, I do get some of the remnants or vestiges of his previous work with Liga. And you know, the T52 I reference a lot. I get some of those tasting notes, and those are that's what I love. But this takes it to a wholly different level where there's so much difference.
It's a great
It's not
point.
just cocoa.
Great point.
There's other nuance that's more flavorful, and it's still smoother for some reason. And you know, I'm just impressed with what he's done with this. I loved it from the moment then. This is a 10 for me, guys.
Wow.
This
You know,
is
I'm not
something-
surprised though. That's
Yeah.
it's an appropriate rating for this.
like this is a 10 for me because you know what I like. This is right in it. And you know, on the stronger flavor side, this is kind of what I like.
Yeah.
And the way that, you know, the chicory root, like what that was like out of left field,
It's
like
a
that.
revelation, honestly.
And the way he brought in some of these flavors is fantastic, and I can't wait to smoke more of his cigars. And I was on here trying to find a box earlier. And they're just not out yet. So once they do come out, I'm going to get a bunch for sure. And I'm going to share. You know, I want to. This is a cigar I want others to try.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Bam Bam.
So as I take my final draw,
As your fingers are burning.
yeah, I've got about a half inch on this. You know, what else can I say about this cigar? I'm just going to go back to the notes that for me rang true. The dark chocolate and the fruit carried through all the way. It didn't get hot. There was no rough edges at all. And the smooth, luxurious delivery on this, for me, it's a 10. And the price point can't be beat.
I have to say, I mean, the funny thing is, for anybody that knows Steve Saka, I almost wish we didn't love this cigar as much as we do, because he's gonna immediately say you guys are full of shit, and you're just giving
You're
it a high
lying.
rating because you sat down with me.
Yes.
So I almost wish that we didn't enjoy it as much as we did, but no bullshit. This is a fantastic cigar.
This is an awful cigar. Steve, you're doing something right here. Fantastic.
All right, boys, that puts the formal lizard rating on the Dunbarton Sin Compromiso Selección No. 4 at a 9.4.
Yowza.
Wow.
That's
an elite score.
When I tell you that is at least 5, if not 10 points higher than I expected it to score tonight.
It's crazy.
I'm shocked at that, a 9.4. Let's compare both the Weller at an 8.5 and the Dunbarton Selección No. 4 from Sin Compromiso at a 9.4 to the others we've done from both of those. The Weller Special Reserve on episode 111 got a 9.8. That's a hell of a rating.
Oh, yeah.
So that beat the Weller 107, the higher proof, little hotter by about 13 points. And the Muestra de Saka from Dunbarton Tobacco Trust, we did the Bewitched on episode 110. That got an 8.7. So Steve is batting 1,000
absolutely
on this podcast. And Dunbarton, the Sin Compromiso Selección No. 4 at a 9.4 is a fantastic showing for Dunbarton tonight.
Can I say one more thing about the Weller?
Absolutely.
So one of the things with Weller that we really loved when we reviewed the Special Reserve, and this is true of all of Weller, is how in their mash bill, they use wheat instead of rye. And rye is usually spicier.
Mm-hmm.
The issue I have, the reason I'm saying this, I don't want the listener to think like any hot spirit we can't appreciate, because it's not really that. And I did a poor job explaining this. There's a spiciness to the finish on this that is in many ways contradictory to what I love about Weller. Like, there are many bourbons out there that have a spicy finish, and if you like that profile, you're going to love that bourbon. I don't expect or want that from Weller for my palate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why for me it was an 8 and not a 9 or a 10. So I think, it's good that there's clearly some range in the Weller line. Like, if you don't like a spicy bourbon, then you really ought to go with the Special Reserve. We'll have to do the 12-year. I'm not sure where that falls on the spectrum, but this 107 has a spiciness on the finish that if that's what you like, you're going to love that. And if it's not, then it's something that maybe you're not going to appreciate just as much. But that's really the driving reason behind it.
For me, on the finish, it's a little different. I had more of a caramel experience than spice. I tend to go for more of a robust spirit. This thing for me was really caramel and vanilla all the way through. It wasn't hot with the ice. For me, it was a slightly different experience. But that just goes to show each palate's different, right?
So, boys, we have to thank Steve Saka again for coming on and sitting down with us for an hour at PCA, having a great conversation. I feel like we could have done 8 hours of content.
I think that was clearly the first of many.
First of many.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's hope so.
So thanks again to Steve. And tonight on the podcast, the Weller 107 got an 8.5, and the Dunbarton Sin Compromiso Selección No. 4 scored an impressive 9.4. An excellent night, boys. Again, a great time at PCA. Great conversation with Steve, and we'll see everybody next week. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for joining us. You can find our merch store and ratings archive at our brand new website, loungelizardspod.com. That's loungelizardspod.com. Don't forget to leave us a rating and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. If you have any comments, questions, if you want to reach out, say hello, tell us what you're smoking, email us, hello@loungelizardspod.com. You can also find us on Instagram @loungelizardspod. We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week.